Welcome everyone, it's great to see all of you. So actually, if you guys can do me a favor and just confirm for me that you can actually hear me. So in the chat, in the YouTube chat, just go ahead and confirm for me that you can actually hear me. Okay, great. By the way, I found that you really have to, this is the best practice for all of you, when doing any remote presenting, you really should confirm with the people that you're meeting with, even if it's just a Zoom meeting with a couple of colleagues, just confirm A, that they can hear you, and B, if you're sharing your screen, make sure that they can actually see what it is that you're sharing. I have been there so many times where it's really embarrassing, and sometimes it's 20 minutes into the meeting that you realize that whatever it is that you're showing is not visible to everyone else that's in the meeting. And it's like way later, one person finally chimes in and says, by the way, are you sharing anything? Because I can't see anything of what, are you showing a screen? And you realize, oh crap, and then you have to like rewind everything. Anyway, this is my first YouTube live event, and this is pretty exciting. I will admit I am a little bit nervous because even though I've done a lot of public speaking and presenting on this topic in particular, I have never used the YouTube live platform. I've never gone live on YouTube. I've done a lot of research and everything. If we have some mishaps, I apologize in advance. Hopefully we won't have any. And I do honestly expect it to be a wonderful experience for all of you. And for me too. And hopefully whatever glitches there are, I'll get them worked out for next time. But let's move on. Our key topic at hand for today is talking about, hang on one second. This was not supposed to be on this page. There's one glitch right there, right? How to clean your Salesforce org during COVID-19. And I think this is of particular importance and relevance because for many of us, whether we still have our jobs or we have less work to do and people are getting furloughed or laid off within the organization and we're nervous about what's going on at work, right now, working remotely and the disruption that's happening within the workplace is making a lot of people feel, regardless of the role, regardless of the type of company that they're in, they feel that they sort of have to do some extra, put in some extra effort to justify their jobs, to keep themselves on payroll. And there's a lot of legitimacy to that. So right now, if things are relatively quiet for you at work, I'm going to teach you right now during the session, I'm going to teach you some very basic, easy to follow things that you can do to identify some low-hanging fruit in order to make a huge impact within your organization and to help you justify staying on payroll. And by the way, for those of you who are currently scrambling, looking for a new job, you're in between jobs, whatever it is, the skills that you're going to learn here are going to help you dramatically so that when you are even interviewing for your next role, you can leverage some of the knowledge that I'm going to share with you to bring to the table some extra advice, guidance for that organization on how they can make things better and how you can help them make their Salesforce configuration better once you actually do come on board. So with that being said, let's move on along. So I already confirmed that you guys can hear me. For those of you who are not familiar with me, my name is David Giller. I'm CEO of a Salesforce implementation firm called Brainy8. I'm a Salesforce trainer. I do Salesforce consulting. That means we work with companies that are either brand new to the Salesforce platform, they're not familiar with the terminology or the technology, or they've already been using Salesforce for some time, and just adjusting my camera here. They've been using Salesforce for some time and they have some area of pain. So that's who I am and that's what I do. And I happen to be a little bit of a social media addict. So whatever social media platform you are comfortable with, you can feel free to connect with me, find me on there, and chances are that I am sharing tips, advice, sometimes funny stuff, sometimes not so funny stuff. I think it's funny, but nobody else does, related to Salesforce. So regarding some logistics, especially for some of you, this might be your first YouTube live event that you are participating in. So I just want to sort of call out two things, simple things. First, go ahead and leverage the chat window in on the YouTube platform. Go ahead and leverage the chat window if you have any questions, any concerns, or anything. I'll try to be mindful of it. I'll try to respond to things as appropriate. Depending on how much comes in, I'm not going to necessarily be able to respond to everything, but I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on it. And at the very least, I can follow up with you afterwards on any particular question or thought or comment that you might have. Next, if you want to stay up to date, by the way, I have a really long list of content that I plan on churning out over the next few months, if not years. And almost all of it is going to go on to YouTube at some point. So if you want to stay up to date with all of the stuff that I will be putting onto YouTube, just go ahead and subscribe to the Brainy8 YouTube channel. By the way, once you subscribe, if you want, you can also hit the bell, the notification bell, and what that will do is it'll actually give you a notification on your device, whether it's your mobile device or your desktop, anytime either I go live or I post anything new onto the YouTube platform. With that being said, let's move on along and let's talk about cleaning Salesforce. So let's talk about what is technical debt. This can be some of you might have heard of the term technical debt. It could be a little bit confusing. It could be a little alarming. It should certainly not intimidate you at all. So what is technical debt? In a nutshell, technical debt is, you know what, even think of it from your own perspective as a Salesforce admin with the absolute best of intentions. You've gone ahead, let's say in a sandbox. So let's make believe nobody's doing anything in production, even though we all know that unfortunately people do things directly in production even when they shouldn't. In a sandbox, you are exploring using a free app of some kind that you found on the App Exchange. You go ahead and you install it in your sandbox. And then later on you realize, it doesn't really do what I wanted. It's not really as good, or the user interface isn't as good as I had hoped, or you try to make the case internally within your organization to your manager to go ahead and purchase that app, and for whatever reason it gets declined, so nobody's going to use that app. You're not moving forward with anything on that app, and basically you just move on to the next shiny thing, the next important thing that you need to be working on. And that might mean going ahead and responding to an internal request to go ahead and let's say create some new custom fields and maybe even some record types and page layouts. So you go ahead and you build those custom fields, those record types, those page layouts. You go ahead and you assign them to the appropriate people as needed. You go ahead and you show it to the senior management, and then for whatever reason they decide that they're going to move on. Let's abandon that entire initiative and let's just forget about it. Let's move on to the next thing. Here's a spreadsheet. Can you upload that into Salesforce, into production? So basically by doing that, we've just created, unintentionally, we've just created some technical debt. We've created in the sandbox, we've installed this app that nobody cares about, nobody's ever going to use, and we've created some record types, some page layouts, some custom fields that we're also not going to use. Again, you had the best of intentions. You know, you're not just like playing Wild West and just creating things as the idea pops into your head. That is technical debt. Now, I give you an example where that technical debt is happening in the sandbox. Think about it for a minute. When that technical debt happens in production, all hell breaks loose. And by the way, this is incredibly common. It's common for a lot of different reasons. So how does the clutter even get into the org? Well, usually in one of two ways. First of all, we've had prior users with admin permissions. Keep in mind the way I worded that, by the way. I did not say prior admins. I won't call them admins. I don't give a damn if someone gave them admin permissions. I don't care if it was the summer intern who insisted that they should get admin permissions, or the COO or the head of sales that knows absolutely nothing about database architecture, about Salesforce configuration, and they insisted that they get admin permissions. But someone or multiple people that had admin permissions at some point in time. And they went ahead without knowing what they were doing, without even knowing that there is such a thing as a sandbox. They went ahead and they built all of this stuff directly in production, and they might even be long gone. They might not even be with the organization anymore, and that clutter is still there. Next, we have prior business leadership asked for or requested that configuration to be done, and it was done, and maybe it was even utilized. Maybe the organization was even heavily reliant on that configuration, on some of these elements, some workflow, some record types, some pick list values, and it was really important at some time, but at some point, they no longer became relevant. We switched gears. Those types of products or services, that approach for automating, let's say the bringing in of leads and the follow-up assignment of tasks as it relates to leads or new opportunities or new cases, for whatever reason, those initiatives are long gone. And that automation, the configuration that was built in order to support what was needed at the time is still there, because nobody makes the time, usually, nobody makes the time to go back and to clean up all of that crap. So that's what we referred to as technical debt. Now, by the way, technical debt can also include a whole lot of other things, but these are the two main categories of technical debt that we find in most organizations. So let's talk a little bit about what is it that we need to do. What is it that needs to be cleaned when we have that technical debt? The first thing is dirty data. Now keep in mind, I didn't talk about data up until now, but data is something else that really needs to be cleaned. When cleaning Salesforce, we've all been there as Salesforce admins where someone gives us an Excel spreadsheet and they haven't even looked at the spreadsheet themselves, and they say, can you go ahead and upload it into Salesforce? And of course, they all think that uploading the data into Salesforce is about as simple and straightforward as adding an attachment to an email. And it is never that simple. Now, by the way, when I say this, I'm not at all trying to say that importing data into Salesforce is difficult. It's not difficult. To do it the wrong way is not difficult at all. Just like preparing a Thanksgiving dinner is really not difficult. However, there are a lot of things that you need to consider when doing that. That spreadsheet by itself, without even confirming anything about the data that you have in Salesforce or the configuration that you have in Salesforce, within that spreadsheet itself, there could be half-baked data. There could be duplicate data. The same person is represented more than once in that spreadsheet. You could have fields that, like, let's say, email address, and it contains multiple email addresses or a phone number, or the job title field contains their mobile number. So you could have a lot of deficiencies, a lot of incorrect stuff going on within that spreadsheet before you even think about, do we even have the fields in Salesforce in order to capture some of the attributes that are represented in this spreadsheet? Because maybe the spreadsheet includes things like favorite flavor of ice cream. We don't have a field in Salesforce for favorite flavor of ice cream. Does the person giving us the spreadsheet expect, or the people expecting to use the data once it gets into Salesforce, do they also expect to see that somewhere in Salesforce? And if so, what are we going to do about it? So we have a lot of dirty data. Dirty data comes in a lot of different ways. So spreadsheets is just one. Another one is integrations. Integrations like, it could be web integrations. We have a web form of some kind, a contact us form, submit a ticket form. We could have integrations like an integration with Outlook or Gmail. We could have integrations with things like MailChimp or Constant Contact, where all of that data is just getting shoved into Salesforce. Nobody is looking at duplicates. Nobody is looking to even, is the information, the typo that came in the most recent web submission, is that going to replace the correct data that we had before? Is someone looking at it? Like, who's doing what with regard to the new entry that came in order to reconcile it against the data that we have today in Salesforce? So dirty data looks like a whole lot of different things. I wanted to clarify that dirty data is a big part of things that need to be cleaned up in Salesforce, but believe it or not, that's not going to be the main focus of this session. So let's move on. Next, we have abandoned processes. This is what I spoke to earlier. We have those fond memories. Remember when every time we got a new prospect, we sent them a case of pudding in the mail. So we asked them what is their favorite flavor of pudding, and we gave them 3 options. By the way, I actually had a client in the insurance business. This is exactly what they did. They asked their prospects their favorite flavor of pudding, and they sent them a case of pudding, and then had follow-up phone calls to them asking if they got the pudding, if they liked the pudding, as somehow as a conversation starter with those prospects in order to do business together in the insurance business. So we could have abandoned processes that at one time were completely irrelevant, maybe even critical to the organization, but later on, for whatever reason, they were abandoned. Yet we have the configuration in Salesforce that was built around supporting these processes that are no longer relevant today. The next area of Salesforce that needs to be cleaned is legacy configuration. This goes back to the examples that I raised earlier. We could have legacy roles, profiles. We could have users that have long left the organization, yet they're still taking up licenses. They're still active users. We could have fields that nobody is using anymore, page layouts, workflow rules, process builders, flows. I could go on and on and on. There's all different kinds of configuration that, again, even with the absolute best of intentions, any admin could have been the one themselves. We could have been the one to actually create that legacy configuration, and nobody gave us the time. Hint, hint, now might be a really good time during COVID-19 when things are slow. Now might be a really good time to identify the legacy configuration that we should consider dismantling, removing out of the org, because for us, it will make our lives so much easier. Just think for a minute. Think about, let's say something as simple as page layouts. Let's say you go to the opportunity object and you see you have 5 page layouts. Now, Ian, who's on the call, he will tell you, and you can see on org confessions, that there are some examples where someone might have 50 or 100 page layouts on an opportunity object. But imagine for a minute that a user comes to you and they say in a very vague and grandiose way, the system sucks because when I go to the opportunity screen, I don't have the let's say description field. It's not there. And you're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. You didn't tell me which opportunity. You didn't tell me which opportunity record type. I have no way of knowing which page layout you're working on. And then you're trying to retroactively go back and to figure out which page layout were they looking at, and you have to sort through all of the legacy page layouts until you realize 20 minutes into it that only 3 of the 50 page layouts, only 3 of them are actually being used by anyone anywhere. Yet you just spent all of that time going through all of the clutter of the old page layouts, let's say even dragging on that description field onto the page layout and saving it before you realize which ones you really needed to focus on. So cleaning up the legacy configuration, your end users might not see that much benefit out of cleaning all of that up, but anyone and everyone responsible for the Salesforce configuration, which by the way, also means developers who are looking for the appropriate API for the appropriate field or record type, etc., that where they need to connect to via API, they will benefit from it as well. So the legacy configuration is probably the most important part. So let's talk just a little bit, because I know a lot of people, they harp so much on the dirty data. So I want to touch a little bit more on it. So what are the different kinds of dirty data that we might find in an organization? So we need to basically do 2 things. First, we need to identify what is the dirty data that we have in our org, and the dirty data can fall into one of the following categories. It could be duplicates. It could be outdated. Could be insecure as it relates to security and privacy. And so this means there are many different security-based laws all over the world. GDPR is one. We have HIPAA is another. But we might even be talking about security and privacy internally within the organization. In other words, the summer intern should not necessarily be seeing certain fields on the leads or the contacts or the accounts or the opportunities. Maybe they are permitted to see that this contact exists in the system, but not all of the fields should be exposed to them. So we have insecure data. Also incomplete, half-baked data. We could have inaccurate, incorrect data. It has the wrong job title. It has the wrong street address. It has the incorrect phone number. We could have inconsistent data, inconsistent as in non-standardized. We've all been there before. We've seen we try to pull a report. Let's say we even try to pull a report grouping all of our contacts by state. And let's say just take, for example, the state of New York, and we realize all of the different permutations of how people have creatively spelled the words New York, with all different kinds of periods and abbreviations and capitalization, all kinds of funky stuff. That's inconsistent data, non-standardized. So let's find all of those where, let's say New York is spelled in all kinds of creative ways, and put in some consistency to spell it appropriately this way. We can group, we can segment, we can build automation off of it, because all you need is a simple typo in an open text field, and any automation is completely broken. We could have a situation where there's too much data. Too much data goes back to the example I gave before, where you have different attributes that were captured at some point in time in Salesforce, and they are no longer needed today. Some examples of that. How many kids do they have? What are the kids' names? What are the favorite sports of the children of this particular contact? What are the favorite colors of the children? Yes, these are real examples that I've seen in different Salesforce orgs over time. So once we find those different types of problematic data, then we have to go ahead and we have to actually clean those records. Cleaning the records means either deleting the records because we no longer need them at all. And by the way, sometimes you might want to pull an export and just save it as a Excel spreadsheet somewhere archived before deleting it. This way, if any point in time someone says, oh wait, where was that record for Joe Smith? And I'm looking for it. You can at least pull that export file. So you're either deleting the records or you are updating the records. So very often when it comes to dirty data, people want some quick hit. They want an app that can clean the data. You tell me which app is going to tell you when you see a contact where it says Fred and Wilma in the first name field, Flintstone in the last name field, and the email address says bubbles@gmail.com. What's the contact's first name? That email address belongs to who? Does it belong to Fred or does it belong to Wilma? So no app is going to be able to clean up all of the different kinds of problematic data that I've identified up above. Now, yes, there are apps that can help to look up publicly available information, and then you can either automate or have it manually reviewed to bulk update the records in Salesforce with the data that was found on public records. But guess what? That is not always accurate. That might be outdated too. So there are some risks associated with that. Let's move on from the dirty data, because I said I'm not going to talk about it too much. Now I'm lumping together the other two areas where we need to clean up Salesforce. I'm actually lumping them together because the way that we can go about handling them are actually very similar. So the first thing that we need to do for abandoned processes and legacy configuration, the first thing that we need to do is we need to go ahead and review the current Salesforce configuration in order to identify things like the unassigned roles and profiles and permission sets and page layouts, etc. We need to identify all of those inactive workflows and process builders and flows. We need to figure out the usage of things like our fields or reports and dashboards. We've all been there before. We've got a gazillion reports and dashboards that nobody is looking at, but everyone's afraid to delete them. And then it makes it really difficult to browse around and navigate through the different folders, or heaven forbid, no one's using any folders, to browse through the existing reports and dashboards to actually find the report or dashboard that you actually need. So it's not so much that it's breaking any system of any kind, but it becomes an annoyance that just grows over time. And especially if you ignore it, it's just going to be an annoyance that people just take for granted as, yeah, in order to find the report that I need, I sort it first and then I just keep scrolling until I get all the way to the bottom, meaning they also don't know how to use the search functionality to just find that report quickly. But why not go ahead and get rid of the stuff that nobody is using? And all the users that are rarely logged in. By the way, when you just this one bullet point by itself can save the company so much money, because especially now when everyone is concerned about finances, essentially, if you can find users who rarely log in and then you evaluate and you determine, you know what, they actually don't even really need a license. You can go ahead and repurpose their license, deactivate their user, and now you're freeing up licenses instead of someone writing a check in order to purchase additional licenses for that organization. Once you identify all of these things, you need to then go ahead and confirm the relevancy of the items listed above and determine what needs to be removed. Just because you found a field that has not been populated whatsoever does not mean on its surface, it does not mean that it's irrelevant. What it means is we need to determine whether or not it's okay to delete it. It might be completely relevant. It might be a brand new initiative that another admin created this field for this not only brand new initiative, this imperative initiative. We have not yet trained the users on how to utilize this field, but everyone is going to be relying on it. So the system might say that not a single record has this field populated. Again, you still need to review internally within the organization anything that you found from the items listed above to determine whether or not it's okay to remove them from the system. So, how do you go about resolving these items? There are two tools that Salesforce makes available for Salesforce admins in order to find some of this low-hanging fruit, to find some of these common areas where some configuration is not being utilized, or it appears that it's not being utilized to the best of its ability. And other areas where you as an admin can take a proactive approach on correcting some of these things before they get a little bit out of control. The first one is Salesforce Optimizer. The second one is the Salesforce Security Health Check. The Salesforce Optimizer, what that does is it basically, actually what both of these do is you go ahead and kick it off, and it essentially runs a wizard that it evaluates the configuration within your own org, and then it identifies for you the areas that it found to be problematic, and it gives you the recommendations and the links to go ahead and take corrective action on anything that it found. So now we are ready for demo time. By the way, if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and put it into the chat window. Let's go ahead and share my screen. Give me 1 second over here. So, okay, you should be seeing my Salesforce org. This is my demo org. Let me zoom in a little bit more. So, as a Salesforce admin, basically what you're going to do is you're going to go over into Setup. So let's click on the gear. Let's go into Setup over here. And then once you're in Setup, all you have to do is go over here on the left-hand side into the Quick Find, and you do a search for Optimizer. Once you do the search, you go ahead and click on Optimizer, and it will bring you to a screen like this one. And at this point, all you really have to do is over here on the right-hand side where it says Create PDF, this button, you just go ahead and click on this button. When you click on the button, for the first time, it's going to ask you to confirm that it's you for that particular org. Let's go ahead and do that. And you get this confirmation screen that you're going to get it as an email. Now, since I actually ran Optimizer a couple of different times in this org, we're not going to have to wait until I get that email hitting my inbox. As soon as you get the email, not only is that PDF attached to the email and a link to find it in Salesforce, but when you go back into your org and you simply do a search, it saves it as files back in Salesforce. So if I just do a search for Optimizer, I can see that an Optimizer report. Let's go ahead and download it. And now I'm going to open it up over here. And this is the Optimizer report. So by the way, I ran this in a developer org that is relatively simple, relatively straightforward. There isn't a whole lot of complexity. Nobody's actually using this particular org for running a business of any kind. So when you see over here that, where am I here? When you see over here that it's showing that it's 90 pages long, please do not be intimidated by that. When you run Optimizer in an actual real org that people are using to run their business, this document could easily be over 200 pages long. Easily, without a doubt. It could be over 300 pages long. So when I see this as being only 90 pages, that's really small. So let's scroll down and let's take a look of what's going on here. Let me zoom in a little bit more to maximize the use of the screen. So, okay, this is a welcome, and it's basically giving me a little bit of guidance and showing me that there are different icons over here that are going to represent the different, the level of concern or priority that Salesforce has found with regard to some of the configuration elements in my org. By the way, you can see throughout this entire document, there are tons of hyperlinks to additional resources. You're going to find hyperlinks to additional resources to learn more about not only Optimizer, but the different areas of Salesforce configuration and best practices on how to fix it, as well as links to internally within this document, which you're going to see in a moment. So let me scroll down a little bit, and here we're going to see the table of contents. And we're only going to look at a couple of these things. I just want to give you a high level familiarity with what this document provides. So you can see over here, for example, file storage limit, data storage limit. Again, this happens to be, I ran this on a developer org, so we're not going to find that many problematic areas. However, if this was on a real live org and there might be a concern as it relates to file storage, lots of people happen to be uploading not only PDFs and Excel spreadsheets, but they're also uploading high resolution video files that are maxing out at our space capacity. If I click within the PDF itself, if I click in file storage limit, it's going to automatically take me to the section down below within the same document, showing me where I stand as it relates to file storage. Now, by the way, watch this. I'm just going to scroll back, and you're going to see I can go right back to where I was before, which is right over here. So now let's take a look over here. I'm going to jump down to where it says optimize and maintain. And earlier I mentioned to you about like field usage and how many fields are on page layouts, unassigned page layouts, unassigned record types. So if I have any unassigned page layouts, let's go ahead and click on this, and it's going to show me right here, you have 2 page layouts that aren't assigned to a record type. In other words, nobody is ever going to see these page layouts. So if I scroll down a little bit, I can see over here the unassigned page layouts. These are hyperlinks to take me directly to those page layouts in Salesforce. Watch this. If I click on it, it's going to take me directly, okay, it's in Classic. It's going to take me directly to in that same org that I was in a moment ago. It's taking me directly to that particular page layout. See here, it says draft simulation to review. That was the hyperlink that I clicked on when I went to unassigned page layouts right here. So this is going to also take me directly to those areas of Salesforce that are referenced within this document. And again, you're going to see recommendations. It's going to have hyperlinks. Don't be surprised if you start feeling overwhelmed, not by the problems themselves, but by the simple mass amount of information that you're going to get here. And some of the areas that might be relatively new or unfamiliar to you, where you have to start making sense of it. And by the way, if and when you come across any of these areas, so that's where myself and my team can help you as a Salesforce consultants. This is where we can help you to make sense of it. And this is where something else that we can do, we can help you to navigate through the internal corporate politics that are involved in dismantling some of these things. A lot of times those are very difficult conversations to have internally within your organization. And a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times it is way better, it's less political to have someone external, a consultant, come in to help navigate around those conversations. Let's go back over here and take a look at some of the other things that we're going to see here. So if I scroll up a little bit, by the way, you see unused reports in that demo org, you're going in that developer org, you see I have 185 unused reports. It gives me direct links to all of those unused reports. When were they last run? Never. So this means if they were never, ever run, and you can see when they were last modified quite a few years ago. So this gives me as the admin some level of high confidence that I could pretty much go ahead and delete every single one of these reports and nobody's going to know the difference if they were never, ever run. See this? Look, I'm going to keep scrolling. Look at how many reports were never run here. These were last run in March of 2020. Let's go back to the table of contents a little bit. And I see a couple of questions came in. Let's see what we've got over here. Okay, nothing that necessarily needs a response right now. Let's go back to the table of contents. So the Salesforce Optimizer is going to show you a lot of really cool things. Where's my table of contents? Let's scroll back up over here. Here we go. How to increase adoption. So let's go back over here. Inactive validation rules, inactive workflow rules, user logins. Watch this. It's showing me by simply clicking on the hyperlink within the table of contents, it's showing me that I have 3 users who have not logged in lately. And it's giving me some high-level metrics. It's giving me the recommendations on what to do about them. And then I can go here and I can see exactly which users we're talking about, how many days since they last logged in as the admin. Again, going back to, we are now in the COVID-19 pandemic. People are locked at home. There's less work to do. For me as the admin, this gives me a monumental amount of information that can help me proactively reach out to the appropriate people within my organization to get the approval to take corrective action here. Wait a minute, it's been a couple of years since this person logged in. Can we go ahead and maybe deactivate? They're not even with the company anymore. Can we go ahead and deactivate that user and maybe make it available for someone else who might need it? So this is really powerful stuff. Anyone have any questions on any of this? Oh, thank you, Lynette. I see Lynette's comment. If I were to go in table of contents, duh. If I were to click right here, it takes me right back. Thank you, Lynette. Okay, so we have a lot of really powerful information that's available to us. This is full of resources that can help us. So this is, again, the first thing that I'm giving you to work on is Optimizer. Go ahead and run Optimizer within your own org. Go ahead and start making sense of it. Don't be surprised. This can absolutely be done as a DIY project. You don't necessarily need anyone outside of your organization to help you out with any of this. This can be done. For some people, however, this is incredibly intimidating. Either intimidating because you're not necessarily familiar with some of the configuration areas of Salesforce that are even referenced here. You're not familiar with some of the problematic messages that the Optimizer report is sharing with you, or you're a little bit intimidated by the internal politics, but you feel like you're going to open a can of worms by suggesting that some of these things actually be dismantled. So that's where we can help you with that. But otherwise, you can go ahead and work on this on your own. That should not be a problem whatsoever. The next thing that I want to suggest that you can use, let's go back into setup. The next thing that I want to suggest that you can use that I referenced earlier is referred to as health check. So all you have to do is go into setup and search on the upper left-hand side. And you can go ahead and click on health check. This is really cool. Actually, I meant to click on this in another org because what you're going to see, this is, I actually cleaned up. Last week I was playing around in here, and so this number last week was like 70%, and it showed that it was problematic. So I went ahead and I took some corrective action. I purposely have another org over here that's ready, and this one is pretty ugly. So this is an org that I use for demo purposes for nonprofits. So let's go in over here and let's click on health check. And once I click on health check, what we're going to see is 56 poor. So similar to Optimizer, This is going to show different areas from a security perspective. So security as in passwords and user permissions and IP restrictions or lack of IP restrictions, password expiration policies, all kinds of things like that. That's what you're going to find within Health Check. And you can even see over here on the left-hand side, Health Check is appearing under the primary tab or section for security. So anything that you see over here, like where it says it's critical, you can see the grouping. So these are the logical groupings, the areas of Salesforce where you're going to find the settings for this. It's going to show you what your value is, what the suggested value that Salesforce is providing, the suggested value that should be there. And watch this. So let's take enable clickjack protection for customer Visualforce pages with standard headers. Now, by the way, I might be like, my head is spinning. Those are too many words in one sentence. I have absolutely no idea what they're even talking about. But okay, Salesforce is suggesting I go ahead and enable it. And I say, why not? I don't even believe we're using a whole lot of Visualforce in this particular org. So let's just go ahead and do it. So all I have to do is go over here on the right-hand side and you see where it says edit. I'm going to click on it. It opens in a new tab and it takes me directly into the section of setup where I can go ahead and take that corrective action. Now, if I'm still a little bit lost and confused, I don't even remember some of the terminology that I looked at a moment ago. Let's just go back over here and I can see what it was. Okay, it had to do with Visualforce pages and headers. So let's scroll down a little bit. And I'm sorry, I meant to scroll up. And we can see over here, this is what it's talking about. So if I go here and I check these off, right? And then let's just go to the bottom and hit save. So I just checked off those two particular things that were listed on here. All I have to do at this point is go ahead and refresh my browser, and we're going to see those two things are going to be removed. And okay, not yet. Maybe it's, oh, it did. It took a second. After the page actually loaded, it refreshed. So now it shows that I'm at 65%, and those particular items that were listed are now gone from my list. So I can scroll. You see over here, this page is broken down by first high risk security settings, and under that we have medium risk security settings. There are a couple of other items here. So as I suggested before about passwords, so here require a minimum 1-day password lifetime. That's under password policies. Right now it's disabled. Salesforce is suggesting that I should enable this particular feature. So I'm going to go here and click on the hyperlink on the right-hand side. It's going to take me to the appropriate page where I can go ahead and take that corrective action and then hit save. So this is really, it's easy to identify and navigate around to see what needs to happen. What is challenging, and by the way, I had this challenge myself, where sometimes some of the things that are listed here, you might not be familiar with what those settings even are, or how or where it's used, or what the impact is. And again, that's where it takes a little bit of patience, a little bit of time, a little bit of research in order to go ahead and sort of unpack some of these topics and identify how should I respond to it? Should I simply accept the standard value that Salesforce is suggesting? One of the things I strongly recommend as a Salesforce admin when it comes to Health Check, because of the way that it visually represents the value of where you are, I strongly suggest that you do the following. The first time that you go and you run Health Check and it gives you whatever number it gives you, even if it gives you 65% like you see right now, go ahead and grab a screenshot of that. Grab that screenshot because you are going to want to leverage that screenshot as soon as you take some corrective action. You will want to leverage that screenshot to share with not only your manager, with anyone and everyone who is involved in maintaining Salesforce, to brag. Yes, I am suggesting that you brag internally about how you fixed some of these major issues, the major security issues within your Salesforce org. You will turn out as a superhero internally within your organization. That is a big deal. Let's go ahead and see if anyone has, I see Ian's got a comment over here. Let me throw this on the screen. Didn't mean to make that quite so big. You know what? It's not so bad. Maybe cleanup focus is wrong. Instead, focus on user adoption. Improving user experience by cleaning up page layouts and adding help might have a larger impact. So, Ian, I agree with you 100%. There are a couple of elements, though. So one is user adoption. A lot of the things that would be addressed through the Salesforce Optimizer will definitely help when it comes to user adoption as well. Where am I over here? I wanted to show you over here. So let's say as this is looking through, as I mentioned before, where in Optimizer, it's going to show you things like the unused reports and dashboards, things like the field usage, where you're going to identify, by the way, watch this, I did not show you this before. So here it's showing me 36 fields were completed less than 10% of the time. If I scroll down a little bit, it's showing me on which objects. Now again, keep in mind, for this particular org, the numbers are really small. In your org, chances are the number is in either 2 digits or 3 digits per org. So if I look over here and I see, let's say for the contact object, the number of fields that are minimally used are only 9. I simply click on it and it's going to take me exactly to that area of the PDF where I can see exactly which fields are rarely populated in Salesforce. So by cleaning up some of this stuff, and again, I'm not saying blindly delete them. Some of these might be really important. Some of these might be used rarely, and that's expected. But where you can find clutter, things that nobody is using, that everyone is frustrated with, the mass amount of fields that are hogging up the screen, and by you being able to identify those fields that A, are rarely being used, B, that nobody needs, and by cleaning it up, that is going to help with user adoption dramatically. But at the same time, when you are reviewing certain fields, to Ian's suggestion, yes, it would be a great idea to go ahead and not only add in the help text so the users know what was the purpose of this particular field, when is it appropriate to use this field, but also for yourself and everyone else who's involved in the Salesforce, maintaining Salesforce for your org, go ahead and populate the description field in the field itself, on the field itself, in order to give a little bit of insight to you and others that are responsible for the Salesforce org. Oh, I'm sorry. You couldn't see it because of Ian's comment. So here you go. Sorry about that. So basically what I was showing was, here you can see the up on top. If I scroll up, you're going to see the different objects, and if I click on any object, it's going to show me exactly which fields are problematic. So that's a really good suggestion, Ian. Thank you for that. Let's see if there are any other. Scorpion 1664. Okay, we'll go with that. How do you propose to get the business to fix their orgs, including the expense of the dev and test resources necessary to make sure that nothing breaks? What I'm going to suggest is this. First, start with Optimizer and Health Check, and both of these will help you quantify some of the clutter that exists in your org today, and some of the easy low-hanging fruit steps necessary to rectify some of these issues. Once you get that out of the way, while you're getting that out of the way, it will help you build the case to make people realize that in order to get the most out of the Salesforce ROI, you're paying a lot of money for your Salesforce instance, that there are other areas to look into as well. By the way, there are many other areas by just diving into even the processes and user adoption. What is it that users could leverage? What kind of automation could users benefit from? What kind of changes to the page layout could users would make users do the happy dance for if you were to implement some of those. So there are a lot of other areas that we can cover as it relates to cleaning up the Salesforce org. I would say start with this first because it's low-hanging fruit. It's easy. It's relatively inexpensive to do. It's going to easily allow you to quantify some of it, and then you can basically move on to some of those other things. Let's go back real quick. Just want to make sure that and by the way, if anyone has any other questions, go ahead and you can feel free to use the chat window so we can talk about it. But as I suggested before, if any of you feel that you need a little bit of help navigating through some of these things, Optimizer and the Salesforce Security Health Check are really easy to navigate around, but some of the topics, some of the configuration that are referenced in there can make your head spin. And again, if you're not familiar with internally within your own organization, like why it's even there, you're not even sure who to ask. A lot of times it helps by bringing in someone else, a third-party person, because otherwise internally when someone is being asked, why on earth do we have this record type and nobody's using it? And the person you're talking to, it was their brilliant idea to implement it in the first place. And they start getting really defensive. And the next thing you know, they're basically telling you that no way in hell are you going to touch it. So many of us have actually been there as it relates to some of this. If you need a little bit of help with that, by all means, reach out and we can help you. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Give me 1 second here. All right, let's see if anyone else has any other questions that I can take on. Kim has a question on Optimizer. There are links for API versions and new code using old API versions. Do I have any insight on what we could do to update them if you're not a developer? Because I am like you, also not a developer, my expertise here is limited, so I wouldn't know what to do there myself. Because as it relates to the API versions, where are those API versions even being used? How were they implemented? Was it from a managed package? Does the managed package have, in other words, an app on the app? Usually a managed package is an app on the App Exchange. So does that app on the App Exchange have an update? Maybe the update will fix it by itself, or perhaps the API was created as a custom API long ago, maybe by people who are long gone. And what is the purpose of this API? Maybe it's not needed whatsoever. Maybe it is still needed, but it needs to get updated. So there are a lot of elements to navigate through all of that in order to make sense of it. But that's the extent of insight that I could give you, being a non-developer and addressing that issue. Anyone else? It's a great question, by the way. Anyone else have scheduled actions? Ooh, this is a good one. So Walker is asking, how about scheduled actions for deactivated users? I think your question is what happens, and my pleasure, Kim. Walker, could you elaborate a little bit? I'm going to assume that you're asking about what happens if you try deactivating a user and you get an error message that basically says you can't deactivate that user because there's some scheduled actions running as that user. So if that's the case, you have to wait and use the chat to clarify if I'm getting the question wrong. But the best way to address that is by identifying what are those scheduled actions. You go into those particular actions and you have them run as a different user who is active. An example of this could be, for example, where the default case owner or the default lead owner for web to case or web to lead is automatically one particular person that has long left the organization, but no one deactivated that user. When you go to deactivate that user, you get hit with this error message. That's a very common way of seeing. Beautiful. I actually hit it on the head. So Walker confirmed that I got it right. Yeah. So the way you have to do it is you have to go into the settings where that person is selected as the default or running user for whatever automation we're talking about in order to go ahead and fix it. It is kind of annoying, but that's also where you could see that it's like one inefficiency is sort of leading to another. Again, it gives you some easy, low-hanging fruit ways to take proactive action in cleaning up your Salesforce org. Anyone else have any other questions that you want me to address? You can go ahead and throw it in the chat window. I realize we are at the top of the hour, so yes, if you don't have any other questions, we're going to wrap it up. I have to say this wasn't that terrible as an inaugural YouTube Live event. Oh, wait, we've got another question from B. Scott. Let's drag this onto the screen. So B. Scott is asking, before deleting reports, do you recommend moving them to a holding folder only admin can see for X number of dates to see if anyone misses the report. So on the one hand, that is a good practice. However, if your Optimizer report looks like the one that I pulled, where it shows that some reports were never accessed, you could feel a little bit more confident about just deleting it. But another thing that a different approach to sort of play devil's advocate with myself. You might have reports or dashboards that were never, ever accessed. Maybe they were even some free, by the way, Salesforce Labs has some really cool apps on the App Exchange with some really insightful and colorful, useful, both reports and dashboards, sales, marketing, customer service focused. And let's say someone installed the Salesforce Labs app or apps plural, and nobody actually has used any of them. Before deleting it, there could be some value in simply putting it into a folder that only the admin can see, because later on you might pull it out of your hat and start impressing everyone in the office by saying, hey, take a look at this really cool sales dashboard that I created that has 15 reports embedded within the dashboard. And the truth is, you didn't really create anything. You simply modified the Salesforce Labs app dashboards and reports in order to customize it as needed for your organization. So it's not so terrible to go ahead and put it into a separate folder, but at the same time, you can also use your discretion. You can also go ahead and, if they were never ever accessed, you could just go ahead and delete them. Don't worry about it. Barbara is asking, let me go ahead and throw this onto the screen. So Barbara is asking, do you have a good tool for cleaning up profiles? So if we're talking about cleaning up profiles, is a little bit vague. So if we have profiles that are not assigned to anyone, you could just go ahead and you can pretty much just delete them, unless we feel that we are about to hire, we expect to be hiring soon, some replacements for those people who were previously assigned those profiles, the reason for which those profiles were created. So if we expect that we're going to be leveraging them sometime soon, then okay, don't delete it. Otherwise, if they are long gone and we don't even know, like a lot of times where there are profiles that are named as people. You look at a profile and the profile's named John Smith. That drives me crazy. If they're not assigned to anyone, you could just go ahead and delete them. But I think what I'm interpreting from your question is also could be another question entirely, which is how do we make sense of the profiles that we already have? Maybe there's some consolidation effort that could be made. Maybe some are actually duplicates. They have different unique names, but the actual setup within each profile is exactly the same. There is, I believe it's a free app on the App Exchange to compare profiles. I'm trying to remember the name off the top of my head and I can't. Yeah, so I see, Barbara, from your comment. Hold on, let me throw this one off the screen and pull up. So I think what you're saying is the same thing as what I'm suggesting. Let's do this. Salesforce App Exchange. I'm going to share my screen in a second. Profile compare. Perm comparator. Thank you, Ian. And let me pull it up on my screen. Boom. So basically all I did was I did a Google search in Salesforce. I did a Google search and I typed in Salesforce App Exchange profile compare and boom, here we go. So yeah, this will help you see side by side all of the permissions that exist within a particular profile. Any other questions before I wrap it up? All right, if there's nothing else, I want to thank all of you for joining today. Thank you for being easy on me. I'm glad that I didn't have too many glitches or anything here. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video that I create, and have an enjoyable rest of your day. I'll talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.